Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Premiership Quarter. Today, I'm going to be doing my round 5 predictions for the AFL season. We've just finished gather round, and I'm recording this on the Wednesday. And I'm going to be going through every game, giving my thoughts on how each team will perform, what I think might break the game open, and let's get into it. So, on the Thursday night, we have Melbourne versus Brisbane. This is going to be one of the better games of the round. Melbourne coming off a good 15-point win over Adelaide, and Brisbane coming off a drubbing over North Melbourne by 70 points. If you were to tell me who's the more informed team, the answer is pretty obvious. It would be Melbourne. But there is a bit of danger in this game. Brisbane have had a bit of an edge over Melbourne in the past couple of seasons. I think they've been a bit more damaging than what Melbourne have been. But so far this year, no indication of that. Melbourne, every line is firing at the moment. Their backs are firing. Lever and May have been exceptional. Judd McVie, what a game against Adelaide. He was exceptional. Kristen Salem's been pretty good. They've just been really in form so far this year. Tom McDonald has been pretty good as well as that third defender, so it's a good move from Goodwin. Their midfield, there's not much to say. You got Gorn, you got Oliver, you got Petrarca, you got Viney. It's just insane, the talent there. And then their forwards as well. You got Frisch, you got Van Rooyen, who's been decent. Cade Chandler's been good this year. You've got Pickett, who's been good, but he's suspended this week. I think there's just so much talent on each line. And then you compare it to Brisbane. Their back line hasn't been as good this year. Their midfield has been slow, one-paced, undamaging this year. Their forward line has been so out of form, but they've now just played Brisbane and they're able to get in form now. So it's going to be a really interesting matchup. I just think you have to go with the more informed team at the moment, and that is Melbourne, and it is also at the MCG. And so I have the Demons winning by 16 points in what should be a really good affair. Then on the Friday night is going to be the Doggies versus the Essendon. Doggies coming off a close loss against Geelong in a really momentum-changing game. It was 2 goals, 3 goals, 2 goals, 3 goals. Consistently, no team able to be on top for long periods of time. Their midfield was exceptional, kicking 1 goal each and having 35 touches each. Crazy, Libba, 19 clearances, nuts game, but they still lost. They allowed Jeremy Cameron to get 27 touches, have 12 score involvements, which is 1 score involvement for every 2 Geelong scores. I thought Buku Khamis played well on Hawkins, but they didn't get the Cameron matchup right at all. They could have put someone on him when he was up the field, then switch it as he went back, but they just let him roam, and he broke the game open. For them up forward, I thought Darcy played really, really well. He was able to take some really good marks. Ugle-Hagan was decent, Norton was decent, and then Waitman was also okay. I thought Riley West was pretty good as well. And then Essendon, they just got obliterated. Their midfield was really, really poor. Horn Francis, Butters, and Rosé tore them up. There was no wines, and yet they still got destroyed in the middle. Merritt was pretty good by his standards, but everyone else dipped below. Their backline got decimated. Their forwards couldn't score. And there's just really, really disappointing game. The Essendon edge, it's clearly not there. It's just trying to make something up, so hopefully their players will do it. And it just hasn't worked. And so it could be an interesting game, but I just think there's a recipe that the Bulldogs should be able to follow. And if they do, they should get the win. And I think it'll be by 4 goals. Then on the Saturday, it's going to be GWS versus St Kilda. GWS coming off a very solid win, I thought, against Gold Coast. They were challenged and they fought back quite well. It was a very tossy and turvy first half, I thought, between the two teams, the expansion clubs. But I thought GWS in that last quarter really showed their experience, they showed their talent, and they were able to get a 5-goal gap on them. Toby Green kicked 5 goals and had 16 touches. That's an incredible game. Hogan and Cadman were dangerous up forward. Their backline was pretty strong, although they did let Gold Coast score 90 points. But their midfield has just been exceptional all year. And then St Kilda, they're coming off a hard-fought win against Richmond. They were blown out in the first half. They didn't kick a goal until like a couple minutes left in the first half. and they just couldn't move the ball past the 70-meter arc. As soon as they got it there, they'd just turn it over or it'd go out of bounds. And then Richmond were able to just get out the back quite often, and it just caused a lot of chaos in the Saints defense, and they don't like that. Then in the third quarter, they turned things around. Like Ross said, it was like aliens coming in and changing places with them, and they were able to score 42 points alone in the third quarter. If they're able to do that more consistently, then they'll be able to challenge for the 8, but it's just whether we get that again. It's going to be a really difficult game for them. Moving the ball is going to be difficult. Scoring is going to be difficult. It's going to be against a really, really good midfield. And so it should be a GWS win, but St Kilda do normally play well, at least in the home and away season against GWS. They haven't played them at Marvel in like 10 years or something, which probably needs to be revised by the AFL. But it is at Manuka Oval, and I think the Giants will be able to get the win by 11 points. Then the Saturday Arvo game is Carlton versus Adelaide. Carlton coming off that very decisive win against Fremantle, where they were helped by the umpires in the last minute. They were quite well held by Fremantle in the first 3 quarters. They couldn't score. Their midfield got absolutely decimated, and it just showed that their ball movement can get stalled, and when their clearance game hasn't been working as well this year, it shows that they can be vulnerable. But then in that last quarter, Curnow turned it on. Was able to take some stupid marks like that one-handed that he took on his chest. Incredible. And then obviously the couple free kicks that they got and the non-call of the touch helped them get over the line. And then Adelaide coming off the 15-point loss against Melbourne on the Thursday night game. It's just a bit difficult for me to see where the change happens. They tried a couple of things differently. They've put Saligo in the midfield full time essentially, and he played well. But they've still got Crouch there. They've still got Laird there. They've still got Dawson there. And Dawson should be the one who's able to be damaging with his kicks, but he's just not at the moment. Crouch you can leave there, but Laird's probably the one who you can move. They need to get something out of Rochelle. He's been quite poor. And I just think it's going to be a pretty comfortable win by Carlton. They've got a matchup for Walker. They've got matchups for Fogarty and Burgess. And I just think they'll get a good win by about 20 points. Then you've got Gold Coast versus Hawthorn. Gold Coast, as I talked about, coming off a decent loss, you could call it, against GWS. They had a lot of younger players playing. They had 7 changes, which is very interesting call by Hardwick, but it worked. It's almost 25% of their team being switched out, and they were able to be really aggressive. Their midfield was good, even though Miller didn't have the best game. Anderson was very good. Rao was good. And I think that they've showed that they are going to be capable of playing against the good teams and having a fight in them, which they haven't had ever in their time being in the AFL. And so it's going to be really important for them to get this win over a Hawthorn team that came against a really narrow loss against Collingwood. It was a very poor first half from them. They got down by 38 points. Then at halftime, they switched to having Blake Hardwick up forward, which they'd wanted to do at the start of the year, then got decimated with injuries, so it couldn't happen. And he switched the game on, really. 3 goals in the third quarter brought them back into it. Another goal in the fourth to get them close. Then Dylan Moore got the goal with 4.5 minutes left to bring it within 1. And they almost stole it, really. Connor McDonald had a shot from about 35 out straight in front and missed. He put it wide. And after that, it was just contest after contest, and Collingwood were able to hang on. They're just decimated so much with injuries at the moment. They're not going to have Lewis. They're not going to have Bruce. And I just think that if they did have them, it could have been an upset. But it's at Carrara, and I think Gold Coast now have a system. They have a recipe to win, and I think they'll do it comfortably by over 5 goals. And then what, in my opinion, is going to be game of the round. We have Port Adelaide versus Fremantle. This is going to be Port Adelaide's 3rd game in a row at the Adelaide Oval, and they're coming off a 70-point win over Essendon. Their midfield was exceptional. Rosie insane game. Butter's very, very good. Horn Francis was a clearance beast against Essendon. It just shows that Essendon's midfield can't quite hang with the big bodies. And then their backline held up really, really well. Their forwards were able to score with ease, really. They're not going to be with Finlayson potentially. I don't think the AFL have made a sanction on him yet. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with it, with his words that he said to the Essendon players. But I just think that it's going to be a really interesting battle. Then you've got Fremantle, who the game against Carlton was very, very on their terms, I'd say, throughout the 3 quarters. And then they just got really unlucky in the last 2. Their midfield completely smashed Carlton's. Sarong, Brayshaw, Young, O'Meara. They were just really, really good, I thought. Their backline held up. They squeezed Carlton to the point where they couldn't move the ball freely. Josh Draper was exceptional on Curnow, and I think he might get the Todd Marshall matchup. They'd probably put Alex Pearce, who's been arguably the All-Australian fullback this year. They'd put him on Charlie Dixon. They'd put Ryan on Georgiades, maybe. I think they've got matchups everywhere, and it'll be a really, really interesting game. It'll be a battle between the ruckman as well. You've got a more physical ruckman in Soldo versus a more agile and athletic ruckman in Jackson. But I think it's at home. They'll have the fans backing them, and Port Adelaide will get the win in a really close game by 8 points. Then we've got Geelong versus North Melbourne at Cardinia Park. Geelong coming off a good win against the Bulldogs by about 5 points, I think it was. 4 points in the end, 91-95. Their midfield was good, but they allowed the Bulldogs midfield to just do what they want. Jezza Cameron was insane. He kicked 2 goals 4 in the end, and he had 6 other score involvements, but he had 27 touches, so he's in absolute form. There's not much to say about North Melbourne. They're coming off a 70-point loss. They were really poor by foot in transition, turning the ball over constantly, not finding targets forwards, not having options. And I think they need to bring in a potentially a bit of a taller lineup, because they've got some speed with their midfield and their halfbacks, but they've just got no options up forward. It's Larky, and that's essentially it at the moment. And for teams to be able to focus on that, I think Tom Stewart might have an insane game this week. And so it'll be a pretty comfortable win by about 40 points for Geelong. Then we've got West Coast versus Richmond. West Coast were, I thought, very strong against Sydney. Harley Reid broke 7 tackles, showed a really good game from the first overall pick. I thought Duggan was pretty good off of halfback as well. Tim Kelly lowered his colours. I thought Cripps was pretty good up forward. Petrocelli showed a fair bit. I thought there were signs of some future talent in this list. Bailey Williams was also really good. I thought he's been really good for them and a very underrated player over the last 2 years in a really poor West Coast outfit. And then Richmond had an insane first half against St Kilda, and then they really died down. They just weren't able to get out the back. They weren't able to have as much pressure on the ball for St Kilda, and they just lost the game in the end by about 5 points. I think Shea Bolton's going to be the obvious matchup. Brady Hoff was exceptional on Tom Papley last week, and if he's able to replicate that and do it on Bolton, then I think West Coast have every chance of winning. And I am actually going to go the upset this week and have them win by 2 goals, because I think if there's any game for them to do it, it's this game. It's at home. They're going to be in decent form for them, and so it's going to be a good win. And that's going to be this week's tips. If you like the video, please hit the like button. It'll be really helping push the video in the YouTube algorithm. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of video, and thanks for watching.